Hi guys, welcome to today's how-to video. This is actually the first of two parts. You can see I'm working on a couple of my Space Marine tanks. Or sorry, Space Marine tank. Yeah, right. Imperial Guard, Lehman Russ. Just base coated them. Did some of the initial paint on the GB commanders and within the weapon wells. But I thought I'd take the opportunity while I'm doing these to go over and show you how to do armored fighting vehicle camouflage. But before I actually do that, I wanted to kind of cover a couple topics, kind of almost as a level set. We'll call this kind of guidelines, and you'll see a ton of examples in GW artwork and model showcases and different modelers. Everybody just talks about, airbrush. I'll admit I use an airbrush too. This paint scheme using World War II RAF colors on my what actually counts as a Imperial Navy Lightning. Airbrush is beautiful. It's a good way to get some of the effects that you might want. That is not the only way to do it. You'll find you can actually use a brush to get quite good results on other types of paint schemes, and you don't feel constrained to what you can do when it comes to camouflage because you don't seem to have an airbrush. Don't worry about that. So one of the things that I want to cover is talk about is that feathered edge. There, you'll actually be able to note if you look online, look for any example of camouflage, and you will see many examples of the feathered edge, both on aircraft and armored fighting vehicles. And so, of course, that's where the airbrush comes in very handy. However, you can do something very, very similar with a kind of a dry brushing technique. So you can use a brush to apply the base color you want on your camouflage, and then you can kind of dry brush the edge to give it a feathered look. It takes a little bit longer, but you can do it. But the reality is, hard edges are a key part of many paint schemes. German Luftwaffe had a splinter paint scheme. They used air spray guns as well. This Barracuda is inspired by the Luftwaffe splinter paint scheme for their aircraft. But they are hard edges. They weren't feathered like the RAF versions. So you'd use stencils, but you still apply by air gun, and you can do the same if you wanted with an airbrush here. But when you have a hard edge like this, you might as well just go ahead and use a brush. So don't feel like every camouflage job has to have a feathered edge, because it doesn't. Even on tanks. Now, all of my tanks that I'm currently doing do have hard edges, but again, if you look at my tanks are patterned after the Wehrmacht's Western Europe color schemes. But if you look at any photos you'll see there's a combination of feathered edges and hard edges, because in reality, when you look at a tank or an aircraft, when it comes out of the factory is going to give it its initial paint job. Now, sometimes that is actually in the camouflage scheme, and they're going to use air guns. They've got the air guns there. They got a compressor set up. They've got the conditions. They're going to do it. So, a lot of your initial paint schemes will come out with being sprayed. Again, sometimes they'll be feathered edges. Sometimes they're stenciled and with a hard edge. So, but the reality is, when you're on a field in combat, sometimes your supply lines are disrupted. Sometimes your equipment breaks down. Sometimes you don't have the time to use something like a spray gun. The maintenance departments handle camouflage on the unit, on the field. And especially in the Wehrmacht, the color scheme orders kept changing, and the units on the front line would have to come up with ways to make the modifications apply to their tanks. Well, sometimes that would mean they just grab their stock of paint, thin it down with the turpentine or gasoline even, and grab rags or brushes and apply them there. So there is nothing wrong with using a brush to accomplish your camo paint job on a tank. Okay, you don't think it has to be feathered all the time, because in reality it doesn't. Not all paint schemes are feathered. Of course, if that's the one you want to go with, by all means, you pursue that. I use both. It all depends on the flavor I'm going for. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, I want to talk about what kind of the right colors and right patterns. Okay. So there is really only one answer to what's the right question, what's the right color, and that is there are no right colors. Let's look at two different aircraft schemes. Both of these are inspired by World War II European theater air combat camouflage. The dust model here, the Lightning, follows the RAF color scheme of kind of an ocean gray. It was ocean gray. There was a light gray underneath and a dark green. That was their version. Now, in the same theater, you had the Germans who used a light blue underneath and two greens on top. More of what I would call a forest green, and one was almost a black green. So, who was right? Well, they both were. It depended on the approach they were taking. Both were effective. It's what you needed to do with the aircraft. Now, the Germans, they had a real need to keep their aircraft on the field hidden from airstrikes. So, using foliage colors would make more sense. In flight, the gray and green broke up the silhouette very well. Gray blends in with almost everything in the background, and the green, of course, is the predominant color in Western Europe, so this was a very effective scheme for fighters, especially in tactical runs. So both were right. You could pick your own. Now, neither of these would work well in an alien environment where the sky was a lot of reddish hues. You'd need to go with more red colors below and above. If it's a desert camouflage, World War II is replete with those. Even over the ocean, there's ocean camouflage patterns. You have to think in terms of what colors do you want to use and why would they be used. So let's go back to the alien environments. If you picture something like Armageddon, where a lot of the world art I've seen for a lot of the 40K in that space has been more reddish tones, you might go with more grays and reds or oranges in your camouflage schemes there. If you're going to go with something with there's a sulfuric component in the air, more yellow, again, you're going to work more toward the tans and yellows. Over desert, same things, tans and browns. Over forests, greens. Now, of course, alien foliage also could be different colors too, so you might want to vary up those. Use your imagination, figure out what you want to do, as far as what colors you want to use, and then go ahead and play with them. Just come up with some concepts. In the next video, we'll talk about what you do with those concepts and what have you. But also, look at pictures. Look in the different war games, whether it's War Machine or Dust, 40K. Take a look at their artwork and see if you can get inspired by some of those, what's been done before. Not everything is convincing the way it's been, put out there as camouflage, but a lot of it can give you ideas to start with. So, again, no right colors except the ones that you're intent on using, and you can get ideas from a lot of different places. Now, I want to highlight one important concept with camouflage. It's not to hide the vehicle. It's to kind of blur it. So whether it's a tank or an aircraft, in either case, what you're going to do is you actually want to break up the outline so that it's hard to tell what it is at a distance. You won't notice the familiar lines of the tank. If you're expecting to see a Lehman Russ on the field, if you can't discern the lines where the Lehman Russ ends and something else begins, it's really hard to tell that there's a tank out there. That's the key component of camouflage, the key purpose. Break up the outline and make it difficult for the eyes to see it. Now, of course, you've got, camouflage only affects visual sensors, your eyes, but a lot of times that's what the infantry and that's what your opponent's going to deal with. They may have gadgetry to go ahead and detect heat, detect EM emissions, all different sort of technology to detect things, but not those technologies aren't always available with every unit. It's very easy to hide. Even nowadays, there's technology to allow us to see in the dark, in dusty conditions, everything, but still it can be defeated through different tactics. For example, you hide in a bunker. You can't tell the opponent, even if it has heat vision, can't tell you're in that bunker. That bunker, it may even just appear as this part of the terrain because it's the same temperature as the rest of the terrain. So he's not going to know you're there. Of course, pop your head out, you're going to glow like a hot ember. But the key is, though we think in terms of, this is 40K and there's all this technology, so I'm sure there are sensors and what have you, but the fact is, it's a sci-fi world with using a lot of anachronistic things. The tank designs are straight out of World War One, and the technology isn't much better in some cases than World War II, with the humans anyway. And so, it makes some sense to go ahead and camouflage things. So give it a shot. Play around with some different approaches. Take a look at other things, other sites, other modelers, and give it a go. It's really worth the effort. So the next video, I'll talk about how to go about painting your camouflage on a regular Imperial armor type of tank. All right. So see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Share, like, and subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye.